I'm at the Whiskey Springs Dutchman 104 interchange, just behind Miner's Needle there. If you've seen my videos in the Superstitions, you might be thinking, man, there's water everywhere. And there is if you come at the right times. After a rain, you've got a couple of weeks of good flowing water. But when there is no rain, there are still permanent water sources in the Superstitions where you are guaranteed to find water. So the purpose of today's video is to show you 5 permanent water sources in the Superstitions. And while we're at it, we'll discuss some of the secondary water sources that more than likely you'll find water, but I just don't want to guarantee that you'll find water, because in the middle of summer, if there hasn't been rain, there is almost no water here. The first water source, and probably one of the most popular permanent water sources, is LaBarge Spring. I guess that's how you pronounce it in French. Charlebois? I don't know. I speak English. In fact, I speak American English, so we pronounce that Charlie Boy. And by the way, this thing right here, that's called a jalapeno. Obviously, everybody knows that. So, Charlie Boy Spring. Charlie Boy is located on Dutchman 104. It's near the Peters Trail intersection. Do not be alarmed if you see an empty spring box like this. Just because the spring box is empty doesn't mean there isn't water up at the actual source of the spring. Generally, if you have an empty spring box, what that means is the pipe that feeds water from the spring to the spring box has been compromised in some way. The second permanent water source in the Superstitions is LaBarge Pool. LaBarge Pool can be found on the eastern side of Battleship Mountain. It's part of LaBarge Creek. It hasn't rained much. The pool can get stagnant and can be a little nasty, but you can absolutely count on water being at LaBarge Pool year-round. No doubt about it. Am I bleeding? I guess I am. Took a little bit of cat claw to the face. You haven't been to the Superstitions unless you're prepared to leave your pound of flesh. Ooh. Permanent water source number 3. You guessed it, Revis Creek. Ooh. If you've seen any of my videos, you've probably seen me at Revis Ranch a couple of times. Revis Creek is a permanent creek in the eastern Superstitions, and Revis Ranch is a very popular backpacking destination. It's about a 7-mile hike. LaBarge Spring is the 4th year-round water source. 80% of the time there'll be water in LaBarge Canyon, but if there's not, way up here at the spring, you should be able to find water. There is a spring back here, but there's no way for me to get there. The water's flowing. The ravine is completely overgrown. If you're absolutely desperate, there is water at LaBarge Spring year-round. Well, this hole in the ground is Brad's water. This is the 5th permanent water source that I know of in the Superstitions. The water's not great. It's nice right now, but under normal circumstances, there's very little flow. Obviously, there's an underground spring that feeds it, but it's stagnant. It gets full sun, so it can be kind of nasty. But if for some reason you come way the heck back here when there's no water, this is a place where you can count on there being water. It's a deep hole, and in a real dry year, you may need to, lower down a water bottle that you might need to sink it with rocks or something to get it down low enough into the hole to get water. But there is water here. It's Brad's water. There's a couple of empty spring boxes along the way that you'll pass that are maybe 30 or 40 yards from here. Up here in this canyon and the canyon next to me is where LaBarge Creek starts. These little tributaries all feed down into LaBarge Creek and then eventually down into LaBarge Canyon. So we're kind of above LaBarge Canyon at the moment. There are two major canyons that run through the western Superstitions. LaBarge Canyon is the biggest, and also Boulder Canyon, which runs from Canyon Lake all the way up past Battleship Mountain. If you come out to the Superstitions 2 to 3 weeks after a rain, you will still have water flowing all the way through LaBarge Canyon and Boulder Canyon as well. That's typically when I like to come out to the Supes, is when I know for sure there's going to be water everywhere. That's the best time to be out here, honestly, which is the middle of winter and also, you know, around the monsoon season after some rain. There are some springs that do have water, and most of the time you're going to find water at these places. Bluff Springs is one. Second Water Spring is another. If you're over on the Coffee Flat Trail, there's Dripping Spring, which typically there's at least some water seeping. So even if things are dry, you can get water there. There's a handful of others that will have water, you know, sometimes, but they're just not reliable. So anyway, those are the 5 permanent water sources that I'm familiar with. And if you come out into the Superstitions, make sure you know what you're doing, because this ain't no joke, but man, is it awesome.